Hello, 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 everyone. This is Helen Higginbotham coming at you for another Sunday of When Black Women Gather. Today, we will be talking with Candice D'Meza, and our topic is Growing Up Right Wing, a Black Woman's Journey to Awareness. For those of you who don't know, When Black Women Gather is an organization where I created a space for us to come together, mostly as Black women, but considering all that's happening right now, all people, all Black people come together and let's talk about what's going on with us. And we talk about things that are relevant to our community. And hopefully, people walk away from here knowing something that you didn't know before you came. And today, our guest is Candice D'Meza. Hi, Candice.
Hello. Hi, hi, hi. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Somebody had asked before we got started how I met Candice, and I actually met Candice online. I was on Instagram listening to videos, and hers popped up, and I just loved her topic. She talked about growing up right wing, and I thought, what an interesting topic for when Black women gather. I'm assuming that most of the people who come to these gatherings are probably Democrat, or at least not Republican. And I'm going to guess that many of you, like me, probably have assumptions about who are Black Republicans. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk to Candice, who grew up in a very right-wing Christian nationalist home. Yeah, I hear somebody put in the chats independence. Yes, we have independence. Um, yeah, so she's going to talk to us about growing up in a right wing home as a Black person, and what was that like? What was how did her family get involved in become Republicans, and how did she ultimately break away from the Christian nationalist movement and found her own voice as a Black woman? So is that summing it up pretty good, Candace?
That sums it up. It sounds great.
Okay. So, again, as you all have questions as we're talking, please, I'm watching the chats even as Candace is talking. So drop your questions in the chat and I will, if it's just burning, raise your hand with with your electronic hand and let me know, and I will bring you into the conversation. Otherwise, just drop it in the chat and we will get to your question at the closing. So anyway, we're just going to start out with Candace telling us a little bit about herself, where she's from, where she lives now, um, a little bit about her family, her background. Can we open
Oh,
up?
yeah. Okay. So I am Candice D'Meza. So I am from Southern California, and I currently live in the South. I currently live outside of Houston, Texas. And yeah, and so I was born in 85. So this is all, I guess, also very relevant to the time frame. My coming of age is very much around 9/11. That political moment has a big impact on how um, many issues were understood at the time, right? Funneled through this war in Iraq that was getting started, and all the reduction of rights that came during this time. So that's just some of the context of the time frame that we're talking about as far as like my upbringing per se. And I feel like that's important. And we'll talk about why. But yeah, I am from a Black family, and by Black, more specifically, I grew up with my African American family. So my African American mother has four Black grandparents from the United States, right? My father is an immigrant from Haiti, but I did not grow up in a Haitian household, so I can't really speak to that, even though there is a conservative Haitian population who is also Republican, which is I find completely fascinating. And they are that thread is a different thread I cannot speak to. But a little bit of basic background around my family. My mother is born in 1940. So I have an older generation who is my mother, right? She's silent generation. I feel like that's important context to understanding also her historical, framework. And her parents are born in 1913 and 1916, respectively. They're born in Oklahoma after having left my mother's people left Louisiana. And my grandfather by 1920 is listed on the census as already being in Arizona. So we're talking about a really early migration out of the South that I feel is really important because I don't know many people that talk about Black folks who were moving westward early. A lot of Black folks were leaving in that wave of migration that was around the 60s, 1960s, moving west. And because of that, that shapes a lot. That means like these generations were still living under segregation in the South, right? Where the segregated communities in the South are very different because you have Black people who are literally insulated in some way because of the segregation, right? So there's a cultural thread that grows there. And when you're moving westward, Black people are a very small percentage of the population in the West. We're a very small percentage of the population. So assimilation looks different in the West, right? All these cultural ideas around things look different in the West. People tend to think that California in particular is very liberal. And we, in Orange County, where I went to college, there is the largest concentration of like KKK members and white supremacist groups, right?
I was
People
going
don't
to
know that.
ask you where you grew up in South Southern because it makes a difference. So you grew up in Orange County, Riverside, or something like that?
No, so I didn't grow up in Orange County. I grew up in a place called La Puente, West Covina. And I went to college in Orange County. I have older siblings, so they lived in Orange. Some of them lived in Orange. Actually, at the time, many of them lived in Orange County. Some
Okay.
of them lived in Los Angeles. My mother was born in Los Angeles when it was a very racially diverse area. And racially diverse, meaning there was this very middle class homeowner kind of thread, right? So in her neighborhood, it was no, not Black KKK. I don't know. That was a very cute Dave Chappelle sketch, right? But no, it's white KKK people in Orange County. And we do not fool with them. But they are there. Um, no, my mom grew up in a racially diverse neighborhood where there were Japanese Americans on the neighborhood. There were some white Americans. There were Mexican Americans, but we're not talking immigrant at this time. We're talking like very acculturated, assimilated Japanese people who do not speak Japanese, culturally assimilated Mexican people who may not speak Spanish, right? And my mom grew up in this neighborhood. Today, that neighborhood is South Central. Like in the 90s, that neighborhood is called South Central. And
Okay.
today they have a new name for it. But so just to show I like to put things in also like a larger historical context that we can kind of talk through. But
That's helpful because I think you're growing. So talk about you talk about your grandparents. So your family historically has been Republican. How does that happen?
yeah, so yeah, my grandfather was Republican. And it's not, when it came to me, it was something that like when I would ask when I was trying to register, I'd be like, I couldn't remember if they were Republican or Democrats. I was like, are y'all, which one is which? Are y'all this one or that one? Um, really the experience of being Republican, um, as Helen, we were talking, is that it's not Republican first, it's Christianity first.
Mhm. That's
Christianity
important.
is first. And it's the interpretation of this Christianity that is defaulting into being a Republican.
Okay.
It's the type of Christianity that they have. It's a Christian nationalism. That's really what we're talking about is Christian nationalism. Okay, Thunder. Um, Christian, I
Can't
don't know if
hear
you
it.
can hear it. It's
Oh,
dramatic
we can't.
effect in the back. When I said Christian nationalism, the earth was like, no. So Christian nationalism is is really bound up with this American mythos, this myth of America, right? Like that's God's chosen people were put here to make this nation. A lot of Christian nationalists, it was things like you have an all-night vigil to pray for the leaders of the nation because God put these leaders here. And no matter who the leader is, the thunder is giving me dramatic effect. I don't know if y'all can hear it.
We can't hear it. No.
Oh my God, it's so loud right now.
What happened on Friday? I hadn't planned to do all of that. I was going to go to the show and be back, but Nancy was
Who is
like,
that?
"Let's go."
Wait. Somebody needs a mute. Okay, there you go. Sorry about that. So, notwithstanding the thunder. So Christian nationalism, what is it? And you said you'd have all night vigils praying for Republican leaders?
No, I don't. At the time, I don't even remember. It was just like, oh, you have to pray for the leaders of this nation. Christian nationalism is the Christianity that's bound up in the patriotism of America.
Mm.
They are connected, and that's a very dangerous intersection. When your form of Christianity is also bound up in this narrative of the founding fathers being, right, bringing God's, the manifest destiny, right? This is God's nation. This is God's chosen people. This is God wanting, even the idea of the westward expansion is based in the manifest destiny that God wanted this and God ordained this. And when you have that type of religious sentiment bound up in a very pronounced American ideal that is rooted in colonialism and genocide and enslavement, but we don't talk about that, right? We talk about God's country.
I don't. I'm like, what are we going to talk about? We don't have nothing in common anymore.
Okay, wait a minute. Somebody needs. Who is that? I can't see who it is.
We find one person I'll be talking to, and I talk to them for 90% of the event.
Jasmine, I'm going to mute you. Yeah, I muted her before. So Jasmine, please stay muted. Don't unmute yourself. Thank you. All right. So sorry about that. Okay, so we didn't talk about your family. What is your composition of your family? How many children and what's happening in the household on a daily basis? I know the video that I watched of you, you talked about, there was music and Christian music and this is long before Fox TV. So what were your family listening to? Were they listening to Rush Limbaugh? Like what was happening?
Yeah. So again, for the household I grew up in, politics is second. Nobody really cares per se. Nobody's like, in my household, with my mother, she's not talking about Republican talking points. It's about God. That's what we're talking about. So, I am the youngest of 7. And my 6 siblings, they have an African American father, and I have an immigrant Haitian father. We are all Black. I am a bit of an outlier because, again, I have an immigrant father, but we all grew up with my mother, and so we are Black. Black American culture is the culture that I'm a part of. So
your friends were Black, your schoolmates were Black.
So I went to school with majority Asians.
Oh.
And but as far as like close kinship, everybody's Black.
Okay.
Everybody's Black.
And I ask that because I think there's, when I think about the stereotypes of who we think are Republicans, let me see what I think of. I think of people who are white adjacent or, longing to be white or living a white existence or, that whole thing. I think sometimes when we think of Black Republicans, some of them will say that it's because they're fiscally conservative and that's why. So, who is the typical that you would think of as a Black? Are those stereotypes valid? I'll say that. And for your situation.
No, I think, Black people are not a monolith in any community. And I think only when we start to dehumanize each other because it's convenient do we not recognize that. But no, nobody wanted to be. Now nobody was explicitly ever trying to be white. Nobody was vying to be in white community per se. All of our family, for as far as my mother, all of the friends I grew up with that were close, besides like my friends who were Asian from school, are Black. My mom very much would teach me about who she knew as far as like Black leaders, right? I would do reports on Marian Anderson, and I read books on Oprah and Ben Carson. And, and it was just the idea of maybe what it is to be Black, was through an assimilated lens. And there is a lot of white supremacy in that, but it does not read as wanting to be white. Nobody in my family married anybody white. Nobody wanted to marry nobody white. And if somebody white came, I think it would be weird. I am the ironic thing is I'm the one who has dated somebody white, and I have a biracial daughter. And that is interesting. And that is new for us. That's new for everybody. That was an accident. Things happened in the pandemic. We're not gonna talk about choices. Situations happen, things were, that was not the intention, but here I love her and she's great. But so yeah, no, and it's something we joke about because it is not the norm in our family line for someone to date white. Yes, Wendy's saying that we have to remember that the Republican Party didn't really become extremist until the late 1950s. Exactly. And I think that's why it's important that I was giving some historical context to like the time frames, because there was a pronounced shift. And again, another pronounced shift in the 80s, a hard shift where, and giving the Republican Party no credit at all. I'm just saying that the party started to change and nobody really updated their policies. Right? I don't think
your family stayed in the party despite the change. They never left the party.
Right.
So
Because
how do they reckon?
Switch.
I'm sorry.
Those parties did switch. Like someone is mentioning that the Democrats and the Republicans were switched, right? The Republican Party was the party of,
right.
Both of them, not again, I mean, all of it's debatable how much they really were invested in the true life and thriving of Black people at large. We know both parties were never truly invested in that. But yes, the Republican Party that my grandparents were in did shift. And I mean, I can only guess, but would they have made the shift like now? I think probably, because there's a lot of programming around Christianity that funnels you to the Republican Party. So much programming. And so even though growing up, we went to Black churches exclusively, we went to an AME church at one point. My mom, I think, went to a Baptist church growing up. I went to Black Baptist, what do you call it? Vacation Bible schools.
You said Pentecostal. You went to a Pentecostal church at some point?
And then we went to a Black Pentecostal church. And around my 8th grade year, we moved. It was just too far to drive. So there was a church people had been talking about, and it was a white culture mega church. Even though it was very racially diverse, the culture of it was white.
So the singing was boring.
The singing, they're clapping on the 1 and the 3. And, my mom, it was an adjustment. She did not love this. She did not love this. This was not her favorite thing. I was very involved. So she was tolerating it for me because I was very involved in the church and in Christian community. And that's why she was coming, but she hated it. And she didn't love it. And she goes to a Black church now. It's the church she grew up in. It's changed faces a lot, but it's the same building as the church she raised my older siblings in. And I think the difference is that when we came home, what we're listening to is Christian talk radio and not Republican talk radio.
Okay.
And it just so happens with there were no images of Jesus around. No, nobody had images of Jesus. I don't know. No, nobody had no pictures of Matthew McConaughey as Jesus. That was not a thing. And also nobody thought Jesus was Matthew McConaughey. This Nordic version of Jesus. No, that wasn't it. I know, but that's why I'm glad to talk about, there's some stereotypes that is like, no, we were not that. That was not the thing.
Right.
In the AME church, Jesus had dreads. So, and he was kind of cute. And I was like, that's a little, anyway, we're not gonna get into it. But I said, this Jesus kind of fine.
Mhm.
But the Christian talk radio is really run by Republicans, right? Like they are influencing public policy, using these Christian talk radio programs to influence people into participating in a
Definitely.
public policy. And I don't think a lot of people know how much money gets pumped into a lot of these Christian organizations.
And you talked about the think tanks that are behind.
Yeah.
Um, so share that with the audience, what you were saying about that.
I mean, we can see it like, if we look today at Turning Point USA, right? Charlie Kirk's baby, that now Erica Kirk is, listen, whew, the way in which they're leveraging Christianity, right? And how much money they're using to bring, to kind of align certain churches and certain sects of Christianity, certain pastors who are supporting the rhetoric of this. um that part, I mean, we're talking millions of dollars an organization is using, to help people understand their place in politics by using very key issues to polarize people.
Right. So so we talked about some of those key issues, and that very often it's a single issue that draws people in. And while I may not agree with everything else that the party is doing, I'm very anti-abortion, or I'm anti-LGBTQ. Was that the situation you think we'll talk about with your mom and how she stayed involved? Because it's interesting that despite the change of the party, the philosophical change of the party, that Black people stayed. I think that's what surprises us because everybody knows in the days of Lincoln, slavery, Black people were Republicans, and Republicans love to throw that guilt trip
Yes.
on Black people, like the Republicans freed the slaves or whatever. So they like to say, and we know that the Republicans of today are the Dixiecrats of yesterday. That's clear, but they will, dance all around that. So how is it? Like, was there a single issue that kept your family engaged, you think?
So everybody had their own points of entry because I have older siblings and they're much older than me. I'm 40 now and they are 50s, early 60s.
Right.
So everybody had their own point of departure. Some of the things I heard is I did hear, and some of it I think is opportunistic, as I did hear a sibling say, who is in a different income bracket than we were, higher income bracket, say, when a Republican's in office, I keep more money in my pocket. And, and she's close to certain Black politicians and things like that. And it was really, it was about the money. It was like, yeah, I keep more money in my pocket. For another sibling, there was, I think, a very clear, just from looking at the language used, a very clear desire to be in deep proximity to whiteness that became a linchpin. And he was in Orange County. He was going to church in Orange County in complete proximity with whiteness, became a missionary, that whole kind of colonizer sect of Christianity. My mom was not either of the two. And I think it's important also to recognize that political literacy in this country has always been low, like true political literacy and true religious literacy are very low in this country. And so in a sense, it's difficult to judge them because they don't have the political literacy at all. There is no idea that there is a huge machine behind these political parties and even behind the Christianity and the way that you've understood it, that there are huge machines and orchestration behind this. So, uh, listen, I forgot the original question, but
No, was there a single? Because we're talking about the single issue.
the issue. So
Was there a single issue?
without the political literacy, there's no real talk about what the Republicans or Democrats are doing policy wise per se. There's only listening to Christian talk radio where they are riling you up with all this fear mongering that the gays are destroying America and God's going to bring judgment on America. That abortion is going to bring judgment on America. And it was abortion, it was gay marriage at the time. And what would the third one? There's a third one that loves to be brought up. Mainly it was these two issues at large is gay marriage, LGBTQIA issues, and now today it's trans issues, but at the time it was gay marriage.
Right.
And then it was abortion. And
Oh yeah,
based on
because
these two things,
right,
yeah, these were like red lines.
right. Because there was this whole thing about praying the gayness out of you and all those kinds of things that were happening at that time.
Right. No, Judy, it wasn't immigration. No, it's not immigration. For Christian nationalists, it's really things that they think are going to bring judgment onto the nation, right? Which is it's a very moralistic point of view that is, if you think gay marriage is going to destruct the Black family, which I think people don't recognize, right? That there are people who think that gay people being married will destroy the Black family. And
Right.
so they are voting for what they think will save Black people, or they're seeing the abortion rates that white, Christian nationalists are talking about on Christian talk radio, and they're talking about abortion. And if they mention the Black abortion rates as being higher, right? And so
Yeah.
now Black people are saying, well, we need to help our community. So we're against abortion because Black children deserve to live. And I think that's what people don't recognize is that there is a segment of Black Republicans who are not MAGA, who are not this, whatever the stereotype is. This is their way of thinking that the pathway to liberation for us as a people to live in this society, this is the pathway. And it just so happens I vehemently disagree. But this was the idea. It was not like, let's be white. It was like, well, we need to help and not abort so many Black children, you know?
You talked about two things I want to go back to. So you talked about your siblings departing. Are you the only one who has departed from the white nationalism, or I mean, Christian nationalism, or have some of your siblings as well? Are you the only one?
So I think the difference is I don't know that any of my siblings, save for the one sibling I mentioned who became a missionary, are really that deeply invested in Christianity. It's like something they grew up with, and I don't think they're really that invested, like, let's go to church every week, the way we grew up.
Are they Republican?
Um, some of them voted for Obama when he came in office because he's Black and he matches the idea of Black excellence in a way that is readable. Most of us are educated, and this was seen as like a moment, right? But it's not something, my siblings, it's not something that's talked about prominently. It really is, many of this is from our mother. Our mother. And she is very, very immersed in Christianity.
Okay.
And so she is all of the dogma is really her. And then kind of everybody falls in where they get in. But in terms of like political awareness or any type of like activism, it's me. I'm the one who's like, hey, blah, 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 and nobody cares. They're like, girl, pass the food. Like, don't nobody care. Nobody really talk about it, except for maybe my sister and my brother who is passed, who was a missionary. My mother and my brother would be the most vehemently Christian nationalist in this type of way.
Would you consider your mom MAGA? And do you think she voted for Trump?
Okay, I know she voted for Trump in the first election. Now, I would not consider her MAGA because I feel like the MAGA people are Trumpites. Like they are part of a Trump cult. And not every Republican is part of this Trump cult. Claudette's question is, how did your mom get indoctrinated into this way of thinking? The same way we all did. Same way we all did, right? I think we all kind of grew up in the households we grew up in, right? And sometimes we feel like if the household we grew up in was on the right side and we got older and we agree with it, then we feel like we weren't indoctrinated. But you definitely were. And I know
Yeah.
it because I know what it's like to change your mind. But most people who grew up Christian don't change from becoming Christian. Or so the indoctrination is not only towards Republicans, it's towards all of us. We all are products of the environment we grew up in.
Mhm. So your mom, you would say she wasn't, you don't think she's MAGA. Um, and so in the house, there wasn't a whole lot of talk about Republican. It was more Christianity. So I thought the story you told me about when you were at school and you told your friend you were voting for Bush. Like, I don't, did you even recognize at that point that you were Republican? So if you can share that story with,
No, I had not recognized that I was a Republican. That's why I had to call my mom. I couldn't even remember which party was which. I just was like, which party don't want the gays to get married? That was my thinking at 18, and my first time getting to like exercise my civic duty was I'm in college. We voted on campus at university, and I was talking to my friend because she's like, okay, so who are you voting for?
black, black girl, y'all. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
I mean, all my friends are black. Like, she's black, I'm black. She's black from Oakland, I'm black from Southern California. We're both Christians, and so we bond over that. But this is where we learned we were different Christians because I said, I'm voting for Bush, and she was like, why? And I said, well, because we have to protect the sanctity of marriage. Like, he's not going to allow gay people to get married, and like we need to protect the sanctity of that because that's what I believed at the time. And she was like, that's it, that's all, that's the only reason. And I was like, well, yeah, because God is gonna judge this nation like if we violate like God's tenets. So you know yeah. And she was like, okay. And she looked at me like I was stupid, and I was sorry for her because she was going to hell. You know what I was sorry. I'm being facetious, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I kind of thought like, well, you're a Christian, this should be like an ace in the hole. And she's like, but as Christians, like our job is to kind of like love each other. And I'm like, yeah, but God says this. And she just was like, okay, we don't agree. And she's just like, we're not going to talk about this.
It affect
So,
your friendship.
it probably did. At the time, I didn't know it, but I believe it 100% did because after deconstructing out of Christianity, I've had to double back to people over the like from those years and apologize because I was a bigot. I was a bigot, and Christianity gave me a free license to be a bigot. And yeah, I had a friend who's South Asian. She's Indian, from India. And I had to go back and be like, hey, man, I'm sorry. I tried to convert her. I think her family was maybe Sikh. I kept trying to convert her to Christianity because I didn't want her to go to hell. And like, what a dominating thing to do.
Right.
Um, yeah, so
Right.
I did have to go back over the years and apologize to people for what I did when I legitimately thought that I was doing the right thing.
So talk to us about the time that you were at the church with the white culture. And I'm assuming that's when you married Jesus.
I did. So at this time, we're talking what, 99s, early 2000s, there was a purity culture wave across the nation that hit a lot of the mega churches. And then I saw it bleed also into some of the Black churches too. But this idea that like our bodies are reserved for God. And if you're not married, then your body needs to belong to Jesus, you know? And this abstinence movement of waiting till marriage and holding yourself sacred before until you're married. There were ceremonies where they gave us rings and we had a ceremony, and it was like essentially you're being married to Jesus. And whoo, a lot to unpack there. And especially thinking about it now as descendants of chattel slavery, the idea that your body doesn't even belong to you. So if it doesn't belong to a white family, then as a woman, especially a Black woman, then you need to give it then to God. Like but you, at no point do you get to own it. Do you get to have it? But I see the crossover in Black Christians too, because this gets into a lot of the respectability politics that a lot of Black folks have still, whether they're in a Baptist Black church or Democrat. That is the same anti-Blackness, is the same white supremacy that is happening over here, but it's happening over here. It just looks different, where we don't allow uh, women to have free expression of their sexualities. We do not believe that sexuality is something that can be owned. The body has to be given over to something else to be made sacred. And those type of thinkings are white supremacist, but they look like respectability politics when it's in the culture. And then it looks like class when it's between us, right? And
Right.
that's where people think like respectability politics and these kind of classist notions are white supremacists, either when you're a Republican or a Democrat. They're not party lines. They are part of how we've all been socialized to think that these things will make us better and more worthy. And really, it's to think like they make us more better able to survive in this society. You know, the way we talk, the way we present, the way we speak, education, pull your pants up. You know, you can't just be doing anything sexually out here. There's something beyond safety in here that's really more about presentation, right? Appropriateness, but based on notions of how white people have decided who's worthy in society.
I think it's easy for people to associate white supremacy with race. I think it gets it's a bigger challenge to associate white supremacy with class. And the way you described it was just perfect because the reason we do these things is because it's by the standards that we have are rooted in whiteness. So I can see that how those two connect with one another. And then I don't know if it was your video or somebody else's video who also talked about the purity movement and how a lot of those young ladies ended up getting pregnant very early because they had no education around. Go ahead, talk about it.
Yeah, that was my video. Yeah, it has
Uh-huh.
some massive implications. Yeah. When I was an adult and I have a kid, I mean, I had my first child at 22. I graduated with my bachelor's, got pregnant 2 months later. Um, and a lot of these things, I left Christianity at 18. I left Christian nationalism, Republican ideals. I left that at 18 and have been deconstructing them my entire life. It just really is, it's like having cancer and being in remission, you know. The water we live in is very toxic for Black folks. And we are all of us, many of us don't know it. I just had the wherewithal to be honest about it, that I was in taking some Black studies classes. I was willing to be honest. And that's, I guess, the only thing that helped me deconstruct is I care more about my honesty than I care about my ideological safety.
So your awakening happens when you go away to college? Is it immediate or how does that happen? How does it feel? And how are you dealing with that with your family?
Um, what started it was, so like I said, in the household, there was encouragement to look at Black things. It was just a segment of Black studies that I didn't know existed. I didn't know Malcolm X per se, right? I didn't know these other people. I knew, like I said, Marian Anderson, the first Black opera singer. My mother's a classically trained pianist, you know. So I'm looking at Black people in fields that are typically white and breaking through as, you know, as like my centering point. But when we went to the white church, this was my first experience with racism. I've never dealt with racism because I'm going to school with Asians and there may be some prejudice. But the prejudice that I'm experiencing is felt for me like more that I'm not them and not because I'm Black. It's a cultural, it's like, well, if you might be cultural, if you can learn some phrases. And my mom worked at my school, and my mom, it was beautiful and vibrant. And so I had a different experience there. But going to a white church where it was white culture and all of the people leading it are in adjacency to whiteness was dehumanizing. It's the first time I actually experienced dehumanizing treatment where like they don't see you at all. Like they only see you as a caricature. This happened, I think it's my freshman year. I joined the leadership on at the church. And I'm coming out of a Christian private school also that my mother works at. She's the head of the music department at my school. So I'm coming out of a Christian private school. I've never been to public school. My freshman year of high school, I'm still not at a fully public school. So at the end of the year of service of what we've been doing, and they have an award ceremony, and I received the Ghetto Fabulous Award. And I cannot, first of all, I couldn't even listen to rap in my house. I was like, ghetto? What? Like, what? I don't know. I was like,
Just because you're Black. Obviously, this is happening simply because.
I was just Black. And yeah, it was such a visceral moment. I remember the feeling of it to this day with like 100%
Your
clarity.
mom must have been livid. No? What did your mother say?
I don't even know if I told her. I don't know. I know I was very ashamed because I didn't know what I had done to give them this idea. And also in my family, because of the ways we were Black and we're in proximity with Blackness, but ghetto was something negative. Like at the time, my mom would be like, "Oh, it's so terrible." Today, now I've deconstructed out of, so much anti-Blackness, but I would do like a ghetto voice. I would get made fun of for like talking white by like Black folks, and I would put on this like ghetto voice as a joke, this ghetto voice, which now I know is just like African American vernacular English, right? Like but at the time there was no awareness of this. So my mom would sometimes say, "Do your ghetto voice," like for her friends, and I would do it. So to be called this is like a reckoning. It's like, hey, in your culture, like between you recognize the differences maybe of class between you, but outside they don't recognize those type of differences. They don't see you went to private school and you didn't. They don't see that at all. So all they
Right.
see is you're Black. And
You're
I'd
Black.
never. So it was also, yeah, that was the beginning of a reckoning that ended up coming to a head on a mission trip in Mexico with my church community. Because I'm in the dance group at church. I'm in the leadership at church. I'm in the strive groups on Wednesdays. I'm at church between 4 to 6 days a week. And my mom's taking me there. And yeah, and there was an instance when I called out, I was like, where somebody told me to shut up, and we were like confronting our leadership because there was some things, and somebody under their breath said shut up, but they only said it when I spoke and not when my friend, who is half white and half Mexican, spoke. And then when we got back to church, it was a lot of Black people who had moved from the previous church I was in to this church, and they were all sitting in the back because it's a culture shock to move from a Black church to like a white church. It's like the music is different. Terrible. It's different culturally, it's different. And I knew it because I had made the shift, and they would all sit in the back. And so I would say, well, we should sit in the back with them. And they would say, no, you can't sit in the back with them. And they would, like police officers, police these back rows. The leadership, like who are white, older people, they would just police these back rows where the Black kids sit. I mean, yeah. And it became a problem. And then I left the church. I stopped going. I told my mom I didn't want to go. She didn't force me to go because she didn't really love that church anyway.
Right.
She didn't force me to go, but I was still Christian. But I was wondering, like, how does God, like, I'm hearing all this about God's chosen people. There's a lot of talk about praying for Israel because it's God's chosen people, and the war in the Middle East, because this is going to bring Armageddon, right? And we got to pray for Israel and all this stuff, and God's chosen people. And my mom's using the children of Israel as constant like metaphors. And at some point I was like, well, why are we not God's chosen people? Like, this is how, and so I started wondering how I pictured God that doesn't choose me. Like it chooses other people, but it doesn't choose me. And I'm living my whole life in service to him, which I think is important, him. living my life in service to a man, a male God, which is a choice also. And he doesn't choose me, which becomes a pattern also in relationships, is it's all encompassing, you know, serving a man who doesn't choose you. Like, you know, when you've lived your whole life being Black and serving a God who also has chosen people are just not you. Yeah, my freshman year, I took some Black studies courses, started hearing things. Yeah, the Hamitic curse. Heard some things I'd never heard before about Christianity and enslavement, Christianity being used as a tool of enslavement, learning about slave ships named after, you know, prophets from the Bible and Jesus and Amazing Grace being written by a slave owner. And I was
Awakening.
like, what? And there was a
Yeah.
young woman there at the time. She was like a leftist. She was half white, half Filipino. And she was talking to me one day and she mentioned something. I mentioned maybe Malcolm X. And I was like, I don't know. I've not read it. She's like, you've never read the autobiography of Malcolm X? And I said, no. She's like, have you read any of the slave narratives? I was like, what is that? And she was like, you've not read any of your people? And I was like, and the next time I saw her, she pulled out of her bag some books for me to read. And I shortly, maybe a year later, would cut off all my permed hair and grow my hair natural. And then I would change my major to Black Studies. And the rift with my mother and family would be massive. It was pretty catastrophic.
That's where I was going to go next. What is your relationship? Well, what happened immediately? You can talk about then and where you are now in terms of relationship with your mother and your siblings.
Um, there were so Christian nationalism, a lot of the ideals that we have, religion, spirituality, political party, they operate in very cultic ways. And you can tell it whenever you ask somebody and you present them information and they can't drop it. Like the inability to take in new information and drop how you previously believed. I see it in Democrats, I see it in Republicans, I see it in Christians, right? Is like the inability to drop a way that you've known yourself to be or the world to be when you receive new information is cultic programming. I did not know then, but the difficulty I had coming out of that programming of not just Christianity, of first is my belief about the world at large, which you could call republicanism, but at large, but also coming out of Christianity was the harder part because I'm 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 leaving behind a belonging and a language and a point of connection I have with my mother, where we would memorize whole passages of the Bible together and recite them together and bond over this shared love of both of us are really given to the Spirit in ways that other people who just go to church casually don't understand. It's a really my mother's relationship to spirit is very vibrant and it's a shame that it's stuck in dogma. But outside of dogma, it still exists. It's very vibrant, the things I learned from her about calling in the spirit. Only is it I learned about Christianity truly when she was outside of dogma from a Black woman whose practices are ancestral and come from Africa. And she just doesn't know it, you know? She just doesn't know it. But it is the ability to speak and feel like you command the world and to bind a spirit and rebuke it. They don't know these are ours. Like we do that. Like that's Black people's practices. That white church, they don't be that white church don't got none of them practices, baby. That was ours, you know, playing and catching the spirit, you know. But no, it was extremely difficult. It was extremely painful because it meant that what exists now as a point of connection outside of this religion being the point of connection, there wasn't many points of connection except for like love, but there's no understanding. There's no understanding, which means love can't really, there's no pathway for it to connect without a place of acceptance and understanding. So no, it was a big rift. I got thrown out of a Christmas with the family over my political views, which weren't even about Christianity, but definitely. And I was like any young person in college, I was reading everything. I was reading every book I could get my hands on. And I was angry about feeling like I'd been lied to. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't let anything slide. I was very, I was very, like young people, I had a lot of energy. And so, yeah, that the relationship between my mother and I and my family at large severed. There's some other things that come with cultic programming where a lot of things get swept under rugs and don't get talked about. And you lose belonging if you don't abide by the program. And I definitely bucked all the programming. And so I was pretty much discarded.
You
And
had you had a period where you weren't in communication with them? Was that
yeah, no, I mean it's been 20 years and that ship has sailed. Like there's not yeah, there's not and the point of the matter is people are finding belonging based on things that they believe and how they relate. And what I see amongst Christianity, amongst people who are uh people who are staunch like supporters of political parties in this way is a need for belonging. It's a need for tribe. And if you come in here to present new information, what you're really doing is disrupting a need for belonging. And so yeah, no, I left the covering of their belonging.
have to be difficult?
It was
But I
very
guess
difficult.
but it also had to also, I think, be a part of your growth and your healing, correct? Could you have could you be who you are today and still maintain that for those ties?
So I don't want to glamorize it and make it like the question is, I don't know. I don't
Mhm.
know. Family, community, village, these are things that they can be very delicate to navigate. And it depends on the people you're navigating it with, right? If they want to navigate that with you and still find love and connection. Unfortunately, I think in my family, the Christian dogma and the Christian nationalism and this type of harsh lines is supportive of also a very strong trauma thread in the family.
Okay.
Right. And I think traumatized people really love dogma. They love clean lines politically. They love clean lines spiritually or religious wise. Right.
Right.
A lot of bigots, racists, right? Homophobes are this way because there's some trauma there that these clean lines allow them to navigate the world with more safety. So
Mhm.
I have some empathy and understanding that. Um, but I think I've seen other people who've been able to navigate this differently with their families. I have not been able to. Sometimes I wonder if a different approach would have done it, could it have looked different? Could I, oh, and the truth is, I don't know, but as it stands, I don't see any other way. But yeah, it's a big loss. I feel for people who deconstruct their way out of whiteness or white supremacy or being any cultic programming and lose their belonging. I just want to name that it is a loss and it you don't ever maybe I don't think heal is the right word. But you never really be okay having to leave the home you grew up in because you've realized that it wasn't supportive of you. Yeah, that's a
Which
hard
takes
thing.
us to the work that you're doing now. So let's wrap this up and then we'll bring everybody into the conversation. So I think talk to us about the Folx Academy and the work that you're doing there.
So, in the years, I found myself in deconstructing, and really, it really looks like asking questions. I am just extremely curious, and I allow the questions to guide me. I just get better at asking new questions. So, at this point, 20 years later, I am someone who practices like decolonizing. At large, I at large, I say that I'm here for freedom lovers, and I mean that unilaterally. Um, and I mean that in maybe a way that's informed by abolitionists, who really and more than abolition, but my time studying under Elder Malidoma Somé, he's from Burkina Faso, from a people there who are they're the Dagara peoples. And prior to Jesuit incursion into their territory, for the most part, they were not engaging, right, with European thought and the world. So he's come from this village to the West, and he was sharing the way that their village still practices what it is to just be in connectivity. And I realized that what a lot of what we're doing here is making political ways, trying to get back to really just like, what does it mean to return home to a village of people where we can all unleash what we have to unleash, right? And know that what we have to give is needed by the people around us, and have people who can support it, to be named on purpose, to be loved, to have home, to care for each other. We keep having to create ways to do it because they keep destroying it. But this is essentially what it is. And to get back to that means that the civilization that we live in, this capitalism, even this dual party politics, is not going to get us there. It's not designed to get us there. We were never designed to thrive here under these conditions. And capitalism and colonialism only thrive because we were placed as the fuel for it to use us to thrive. So I love Black people. I don't want to be with all Black people, but I love Black people, even though some of y'all I want to be over there. But for us to thrive collectively, this system would have to go. It would have to completely, like, I don't believe any of it is redeemable. It'd have to be composted entirely. And I say composted because shit can become fertilizer, and that's to plant new seeds. I think that's what we need. So I make work towards this end, but I am very clear that I am not a Christian. I am not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I am not a supporter of the American government at large at all. I think it is an enemy to us. I am very clear on that. I don't think it's life affirming. I'm very clear on that. I think it's a danger to our children, to our elders, and everybody in between. So anybody who's on the side of like, I'm like, you can be over here with me, but I'm not over there with you. And I would like to give tools, which is like political literacy, some historical context, and then a lot of spiritual tools for, you can ask people to leave behind a Republican Party. You can ask white people to leave behind whiteness, but truly there's a skill and capacity that would need to happen. And if you ask people to leave a home, you got to give them a new one. Why would they leave one? You don't have a home to give them. You want them to just wander. And humans are pack animals. We need people. So in order for people to deconstruct these ideas, this cultic programming, there's some skill sets that need to be developed. So I, through Folx Alchemy School on my website, just keep creating ebooks or workshops or experiences that I'm like, here's how you can deconstruct. Here's the questions I ask. Here's what I've learned. Here's what I've learned in connecting to ancestors and ancestry. And so I create that type of work.
So make sure you leave your the link for your website and the academy in the chats. When you were talking earlier, when you were talking about the situation when you were when they called you, they gave you the Ghetto Fabulous Award and the shock that it caused you. It took me back to what's happening right now, where we've got these young Black men who are in these all-white environments and they're being harmed. Uh, I don't know if that came to mind for anybody else, but do you have anything to say about parents who have their children in these, where they're the only Black, or, the indoctrination is not friendly to us being there?
Putting a Black child in an all-white environment is violence.
Mm-hmm.
It's violence. And even if, because the mental violence of what it does to the psyche, is I really do believe that it fractures something in you. And I think living in the West at large fractures us continuously. And we are like, some of us are actually trying to recover those pieces of what it means to be Black in a hostile environment. And they have to keep redefining what that is because it's so hostile, right? And that you can't just let this idea of who you are rest, because inadvertently who you are will get absorbed into something hostile and turned against you. But I think to put a Black child in a white space where they're not going to be affirmed in their humanity, affirmed in their ancestry, affirmed in their story, where even the neutral unspoken thread of the society is inherently violent to who they are, it's not about being called the N-word. It's not about somebody saying your hair and your skin. It's just about the status quo of our society is already anti-Black. It's no one has to say it. It's an Band-Aid colors not being your color. The fact that they keep having to be like, we made Band-Aid colors in the color, and they'll name things flesh color. And you'll be like, baby, how are you the color of skin? How does that make sense? These things affect us deeply. So I think any Black parent putting their child in an all-white space is assisting in violence, is assisting in harm to their child. And the way that it's labeled is that these neighborhoods that are safer are intentionally created that way because what makes them safer is that there's no Black people there. So
Yeah, that's been a big thing for me this last week because, I look at grown Black people who have problems navigating these all white spaces. So when we put our children who were not equipping, like your mom obviously told you about, she didn't talk, she talked to you about Marian Anderson and probably Arthur Ashe and people of that nature, but she didn't talk to you about Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, the quote unquote militants. So, would you think, I'm taking that to receive that your mom didn't teach you about racism? Like, was there any talk about racism in your house, or was it just a given? Because I say, like, what are we teaching our children at home, right? What are we exposing them to? If I come into your house, do I know I'm in a Black house? Is there some Black art? Is there some Black literature? What's the conversation that you're having around the dinner table? So, although I'm sending you into this white environment, I am fortifying you with a strong sense of who you are. Is that your baby girl? A strong sense of who you are. And so you're armored somehow, but to send our kids into these environments defenseless is kind of, I grew up interesting because I grew up in a mostly white environment, but our neighborhood was Black, right? So even though I was one, sometimes two Black people in the class, we were Black at home, we were Black in the neighborhood and all that. So it was different. But anyway, I don't want us to hog the whole conversation. I know that there are questions out here, and I've been trying to talk to you and read these chats at the same time, which is difficult. If anybody has a question that you're wanting to ask Candice, can you please raise your hand or just let me know, and I'll bring you on screen and you can ask her your question. And in the meantime, Candice, if we can look at the chats, and I know I've missed some stuff. Does anybody have a question? I can't believe that. I know y'all did not listen to all that. Nobody has a burning question. Oh, Pam. Go ahead, Miss Pam. I see two, Pam and Wendy. Okay, I'll bring Pam on first. Pam.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Candice. Very engaging and thought-provoking information, your lived experience. How are you raising your daughter in all of this, in your understanding and how this world is right now and how it appears to be going? What are you telling her, sharing with her? I don't know how old she is. I just saw her in the background. But
she's 4. So
oh my goodness. Okay.
No.
Maybe that's not a good question yet.
But I have older sons, right? I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. And
Okay.
hey, baby, you grow up in a household with on the political spectrum, I am a Black radicalist. I am a Pan-Africanist. I am an abolitionist. And I'm also against the patriarchy. So this is a household they grow up in. I'm very vocal about this. This is my life's work. This is my life's work. They live in a household with a woman who does this. Now, they also live in a larger society where everybody in their family does not agree and have the same tenets. They all have to find their way. But I have an ancestral altar in the house. One of them has woken up and seen me at my altar praying, doing what I do. And they were like, huh. And I'm like, go back to bed. I'm doing my business, but it's not a secret. Yeah, no. So now what they will do, I don't know. We'll see, but I will have words.
Okay, I understand that.
So is there political talk in your house right now or no?
Oh yeah, constantly. But listen.
No, I mean, okay, wait a minute. I'm sorry, let me back that up. in terms of party and how and voting? Because you have one of your children is a voting age. So have you had the talk and what is the talk?
He knows where I'm at.
Okay.
But like again, it's no need to have a specific talk because we've been talking all along. We've been talking all along. He's very clear how I feel about the American government, and the books are all over the house. But again, I don't know. The teenagers are interesting because I would think if you grew up with me, you'd be a little bit more radical. But I'm seeing a growing literacy coming, right? But I don't know that maybe they're at the age where you see the fruit of that actually come into fruition. So I'm curious. I don't know what will be. I'm interested to see. But because I'm a woman and they're young men, part of my big thing is like, do you know your role when it comes to issues facing Black women, not just Black people?
Right.
Because we have the added part of misogyny, which is coming from our own brothers in our own community. So you have a double, which is together you and I are on race, but I'm constantly talking about the issues that face and plague me, that if they don't activate in the world on behalf of me and their sister, will be left behind and be endangered by their refusal to deconstruct what it is to be a man and how that's held. So
Gotcha.
that has to happen too. That's important. But we'll see.
Wendy, you had your hand up. Did you want to ask a question? Thank you, Pam. Wendy, you're with us. We can't hear you, Wendy. You're Wendy.
You're on
Oh,
mute,
you're
Wendy.
muted.
You're
Unmute,
muted.
sorry. Unmute.
Yes.
I'm not really dressed, I'm home. So a little bit about me. I am biracial. And I didn't know the term biracial till many years later, till the term came out, I think more in the 90s in America. I went to university in New York. Both me and my husband, I was married with my first kid while I was still going to university. I left here in the Caribbean. We have a little bit different experience. I didn't know any racism in the Caribbean. Maybe between Indians and people of East Indian descent. I have everything in me. I have African, East Indian, and I'm half white.
Are you Trinidadian?
Yes, I am.
I can hear it.
Trinidadians are different from all the other Caribbean islands. So when I went to live, my parents migrated to Mother England, which was supposed to be so good and not racist. Well, that's the experience I had. I had the vice principal of my high school. First of all, they channel all the non-white children into school called comprehensive school instead of going to the normal. No matter how good you perform in elementary school, you went into comprehensive schools. And my vice principal was the career guidance officer. And I came to her and I said, what would you like to do, Wendy? I said, I want to be a doctor like my sister who's in medical school or who's going to, and my brother who's doing pre-med. Oh, no, Wendy. Can't do that. This is London, England. You have to work in Marks and Sparks, which is called a big department store in London called Marks and Spencers. Maybe you all heard of it. So that's where she was putting me, into Marks and Sparks after coming from. So I was not faced with really with slavery and what our people invented until I never regretted going to university. I left London after high school and went to university in New York and took a lot of Black history. That's when I realized I was Black. It was funny to me because I was just a human being. Many times when I fill out forms in America and they put other, I put human race because I don't like people to channel me because of my color. I don't believe in it. All right, race is a social construct, as we all know. And so going to school really, as I put in the chat, one night we thought we were going to, whole night, my husband and I went to the same university at City College and in Harlem. And one night I thought I was going to hear Dick Gregory in comedy. And he educated us. He started off with making no apologies to the white people in the audience. And he told us that the pyramids were mathematical structure in line with the North Pole. They know geometry and algebra. And that was although I did Black history in the first year, that to me, I just made my awakening and my pivotal point where I realized that, hey, so when I came back home, I brought all my children. I had all my children in the States, and I brought them back home because I did not want them to be second-class citizens in America. I did not want them to be treated in the Caribbean. You could see people are doctors, lawyers, janitors, whatever you want to be. You can be in the Caribbean, and I wanted my children to have an experience of that. Both my husband and I never regretted it. But I did, America taught me a lot. I mean, it was a lot of painful lessons that I had in America. But I am online with you. I used to think, why they say God would punish me? I haven't done anything wrong as a child. God would punish you. And when I started to read Respect to Everybody Who Believes in the Bible, I said to my friends who are very religious down here, Catholics, I said, I'm a grandmother and a mother. And why would I plant a tree in my children's garden if I know it's going to hurt them? I said, what am I, a sadist? I said, why am I planting a tree? Why am I making a good, I said, I want you all to use your brain. Why am I making a good angel and knowing he's going to become the devil and haunt my children? So I had some issues with that. That's what was able, and why am I children of harm? Why he doesn't like me? What the hell did we do? And why am I a slave? Slaves obey your master. So my white father told me that was a book design. As I tell you, Hitler would have loved my father. He was blonde hair and blue eyes. And that's just a sideways joke. And so I am saying to you, I started to think for myself, although I have friends still are Catholics, Anglicans, Pentecostal, we get along very well, but I can't believe I can't be in a cult. I really can't. I can't do it. You know, so I'm glad that I joined. Judy, thank you for reminding me. Judy's my sister-in-law, and we're married to brothers. And I'm saying to you that I'm really, really happy that I came on here. Thank you very much, Candice. And thank you very much, Helen. I really do appreciate this evening.
Thank you.
And I hope I haven't been too long.
No, thank you. Did you want to respond in any way to that, Candice? And we have 3 hands up still.
Oh, I just so appreciate what you had to say, and the care that you've taken. Moving your children out of the United States is something I'm really thinking about. Anyway, and I'd love to continue connecting with you. And I just really appreciated what you said. And also, the role of elders in our community and our teaching is so important. You know, elders who are unabashed and able to say what they need to say to help us to awaken. Like I didn't awaken on my own. I mean, I talk about the elders I have all the time. The time was Dr. Ryland Rabaka. He changed my life. I think he's still in University of Colorado in Boulder, I believe. Dr. Karenga, who created Kwanzaa, was the head of the Black Studies department. It was a question he posed to students where he was asking, why do you, like to the women in the class, why do you have straight hair? Why do you have blonde hair? Why do you have blue contacts? And I, at the time, had a long perm my freshman year, and they were arguing him down. They're like, it's just my preference. And he said, who taught you to prefer not you? And it was that question that made me cut my hair, cut the perm off and grow it out and say, who am I? And Dr. Ika Weba Bunting, my university professor who died last year, like these were men, especially Dr. Bunting, who took a young Black girl and were willing to mentor me because they believed in my mind enough to push me in my thinking and not lessen it, you know, because I'm a young girl, that I could be, they saw that I had this voice and I had questions and I had power, and they nurtured it. And I'm really grateful to all the elders, you know, all the elders who've done this type of work, because without them, we could not do it. You know, the children are lost if the elders don't speak.
Absolutely. Let me, we have in the chat, also want to know, did you answer the question about, did your mother teach you about racism? And if so, how did she go about it? Did you answer that?
Um, I never not knew there wasn't racism. I just didn't experience it. Hadn't experienced it because my mom didn't put me per se in white community like that. I just wasn't. It was kind of like until this church, right, that I liked because I didn't know better. Um, and I don't think my mom had really, because it was racially diverse, right? But it was about the culture of the church that's interesting. But now my mom was kind of like, you know, it's like things you say in a black house, and you'd be like, them white people, they do this over there. You know, that's how I grew up. My mom bought me all black everything. If there was a black version of anything, she bought that. I had black dolls. I had black art, beautiful black art of little black girls. If it was a little black girl on anything, my mom was gonna buy it for me. My mom is um she's more ethnically ambiguous than I am, but she always bought me brown skin things. So there wasn't a deficit in that regard of like for lack of not seeing it. All the art in the house was black. She bought it, she
But
sought it out.
did she talk to you about discrimination and maybe experiences that she had had personally herself, like at work, maybe? And Narlene, you're next for the next question, so you're up. But
The thing
anyway,
there was definitely some preparation. I think it's hard to really pinpoint anything because it was just part of the normal understanding. And you grow up in a black household, you just kind of, but sometimes our parents didn't, the specificity of the training for what I would encounter maybe was lacking, right? But there wasn't a deficit. We didn't have no white Jesus in the house. My mom, like I said, she's a pianist. She would take me to black art events. I would go to see black artists. I'm a black artist now because of the things that my mother exposed me to as far as what black people were making. I only saw black people doing excellent things. That's what I knew. That's what I saw. So when
but
people were
you
saying
weren't in a
stuff,
house. You weren't in a house where somebody was preaching to you. Racism is a thing of the past, and get okay. So that's important.
no,
Okay,
not at all.
Narlene, you have a question, dear. Narlene.
Hi, no, I put NC on the.
Oh, lo siento.
I know, yeah. So I don't have a question, but just a commentary. Or like, I just wanted to make a comment.
Go ahead.
Um, I wanted to say thank you very much, Candice, for coming here and speaking about your experience. And I want to thank Wendy also for sharing her experience. I grew up in the Caribbean. And I grew up in Haiti. So you mentioned that your father is Haitian and that there is a segment of Haitians who are Republicans. I can speak to that, and it very much mirrors your experience from your African American side. I can speak to what that is because a lot of the things that you were saying I can resonate with.
Hmm.
In terms of Wendy, I myself grew up in Haiti. Of course, I know the history, the slavery. We're the first Black Republic. Very proud of that history. Learned it in school. We talk about it a lot. But I never experienced racism until I moved to the United States. I was almost an adult when I moved to the United States. So I never experienced racism. And when I saw movies that spoke of racist themes, such as I remember seeing A Time to Kill. To me, that was something in the past. That these things did not happen in the U.S. anymore,
Hmm.
right? I believe that everyone was treated equally in the U.S. until I moved, and I was like, oh, got to see something different. Um,
Surprise.
so, so yeah, it was pretty interesting because, and I can speak on another time. I can speak more to that because I'm like, okay, like I'm kind of like in between because I would walk into spaces where white people are, where black people wouldn't go because I did not know what would happen, and then it's like white people are like, oh wait, what is she doing here? She's different. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not any different. And then black people are like, wait, hold on, why is she going over there? Doesn't she understand? And I'm like, wait, but there's no racism. So anyways, that's the in between, which is very interesting. Now speaking to, and I put something in the chat. It's decolonization of the mind through Christianity, and there are different versions of Christianity. Because when I moved to the United States, also, I got a different version of Christianity than what I grew up with. Growing up, I grew up Baptist. I grew up in a pretty comfortable situation. I was middle class in Haiti, so I went to the best schools, and I did not grow up dirt poor. I used to vacation to the U.S. pretty much every summer. So with that, it's a different being Baptist church. There are like certain things. The indoctrination is so severe. It is so severe where I could not wear pants. If you are a woman who wore pants, you are immodest. Therefore, you could go to hell. My ears were not pierced until I was 24 years old. These minute things were indictment of how Christian you are and whether or not you would go to hell, right? And with that indoctrination, people actually took things in the Bible literally.
Yes.
Literally. So
Yes.
it's not like it's not and a lot of another part of it is I've heard people say, thank God for slavery. Because
Yes.
if there wasn't slavery, hold on, if there wasn't slavery, I saw your face, Helen. If there wasn't slavery, we wouldn't have learned about Jesus Christ in the Bible and become Christian. The
Yep.
identity before being black, right? Before being black, you are Christian first of all.
Mm-hmm.
That is the primary identity.
Yes.
So guess what? And it is easy for these people, and I'm talking about being in Haiti, not knowing about Christian nationalists in the US, right? And I will say this, Candice, you are the first Black American I've heard talk about the type of Christianity that I grew up with. The first, and I've been living in this country for 25 years.
Mm.
Other Black Americans I've heard talk about Christianity has been the Christianity of like love everybody. Now we would say we love everybody, but you're going to hell, and I need to preach to you. And you're going to hell. You did this, you're going to hell. Oh, and the culture of purity, you had sex before marriage, you're going to hell.
Yep.
Like it is the end. Now I do not call myself a Christian anymore. I have not been for almost 11 years now, which my family does not truly understand. They kind of like, and I don't think some people have come out very forcefully and said, you know what? No, I'm not. But my family, they still can't wrap their mind around that, because the expectation also is that if you are not that brand of Christianity, you are a bad person. You are completely a bad person. And the part that you were saying that you were a bigot, that you were preaching to your friend who's South Asian, in that specific brand of Christianity, if you don't have the same exact beliefs, you are going to hell.
Yeah.
So every Catholic is going to hell. Like I was Baptist, so if you are Methodist, okay. Episcopalian, no, you're not. You're going to hell. Like mind you, in the in if you're yeah, Catholics are going to hell. Everybody pretty much is going to hell. And I remember I was a very young girl, and we're having a debate. I was like, what if nobody heard of Jesus? What if people die in the Amazon forest and they did not hear about Jesus? Doesn't God create all of us with a conscience? Like I was a little girl reasoning that way, and I was told, nope, if they didn't hear about Jesus, they're going to hell. Yes, all of these people who died before, like it doesn't matter. You have to accept Jesus Christ, you know. So that is where once that colonization of the mind is done, that is where it becomes so easy to demonize others. Like it's like, oh, you're LGBT, you're going to hell. You're going to hell. yes, it's fine. There's racism, but guess what? I'm Christian first. Before I'm a black person, I'm Christian first. And even if I'm being treated badly, but guess what? It's for my own good because that is how God was able to. God made a way for us to be introduced to Christianity. Because when we were in Africa, we didn't know about God. We didn't know about Jesus specifically. Therefore, we were sinners. Although we may die on this earth, but we have eternal life. So that is why people are not thinking about what is happening here. Some people actually they want the end of the world to happen. They want bad things to happen. They want war to happen. The whole thing about praying for Israel, I
Mhm.
grew up with the idea that Israel, they are the chosen people. They cannot do wrong. It
Yep.
doesn't matter what they are doing. They can like it doesn't matter. So because that's the indoctrination, someone who has that view is not going to be able to look at what is happening in Palestine and say, "Oh my goodness, we need to look at the suffering of all of these children." The view is going to be what does God want? Israel, they are the chosen people, therefore they can't do any wrong. Now we are not going to participate in it, but they can't do any wrong, so we're gonna let them do what they are doing, and that is why before they think about the plight of blacks in America, blacks around the world, the plight of women being subjugated to men, we can talk about that also. The plight of like LGBTQ or any brown people or any marginalized group, any group that is diminished, before they look at that, the first thing they see is like my identity is Christian. I am not of this world. I am in this world. I am not of this world. So I need to follow very blindly what the Bible says, regardless of contradictions. And because I'm not supposed, my kingdom is not in this world. My house is not on this world. It is in heaven. So
So
that is what people are thinking.
let me interrupt then, and then we need to move on to the next person. I think I want you to tie it into having that kind of indoctrination as a Haitian community, and how does that transfer over to the Republican vote?
Well, it transfers over to the Republic. And I've my deconstruction out of Christianity has been gradual, and I could see sign of it for me personally as a little girl, where I would say this doesn't make sense. And I also had friends growing up who were my best friends, and they were Catholic, and I couldn't believe that my friends were going to hell. So I was like, okay, there was some leeway there. So that kind of like gave me a wider perspective on things. And now, how does it tie to the Republican Party? Again, the indoctrination: no gays, no abortion, no. This is all because remember, you may be looking at it as the racism part. They cannot see the racism part really,
Mhm.
because the primary identity is not what you are born. It's not the immutable characteristic of being black, because the first thing is I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. They can do whatever to me as a black person. Blah 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 blah. My house is in heaven. I'm not like all of that. This is just what is happening to me, and blah, blah. It doesn't matter. The primary identity is Christian. So Christian is like, okay, as a Christian, I shouldn't support gay people. Therefore, this party, although I don't agree with everything they are saying, although they are racist, although they harm people, but guess what? God doesn't like gays, Sodom and Gomorrah. Therefore, this is the party I should vote for. That's it.
Basically, Candace, she's supporting what you said in terms
A
of.
That's
hundred,
it. That's it.
it's 100%. This overlap is 100% the same. I've heard the same. Thank God at a table, the Christmas I got thrown out. My grandmother said, "Thank God that slavery happened, because who knows what gods we would have been worshiping in Africa." She's exactly correct. And for people to understand this, they have to know that it is Christian identity is first.
And it's over politics. That's what I'm trying to get to. So
It's
it's
because
the Christianity that's driving Black people to be a part of the Republican Party. Even if they don't agree with the rest of the platform, there's something about the Christian principles that keeps them in that party.
And the Republican Party has been doing this with intention. And that's where I say, or there's these organizations like Focus on the Family, where they're saying they're promoting Christian values. They're pumping millions of dollars into these communities, to these Christian programs. But on the backside, these people who run these Christian orgs are in cahoots with Republican politicians. And when people don't know that relationship is happening, they think that this type of funneling is happening like a naturally occurring phenomenon. It is not. There are millions of dollars pumped into leveraging communities towards the Republican Party by using Christianity as the means to do this. And they use it over like mainly three big issues. But this is what is happening, and this is how they're ending up Republican. And people think that this means they want to be white, and it doesn't. But this identity is being weaponized. It is being intentionally weaponized. Turning Point's doing it today. Turning Point is doing the same thing. This playbook is very old. And I see the Democrats, people might get mad. The Democrats do it with identity politics. They do the same thing with identity politics, right? If you use the right language, it doesn't matter that they're not applying this in fidelity or investing deeply in these communities. They use the right language, and then people who don't are working to survive are not going to investigate all of the intricacies of these policies. They're not written for people to read through. Right? I have a master's in public administration. Reading through these policies, I'd be like, baby, who gonna read? None of these people is gonna read this, baby. They're trying to survive here under capitalism. Everybody's working and busy. So you
Right.
say, hey, we support this, and then people go in droves, right? So the Republicans do it this way, but the Democrats do it the other way. It's the
Gotcha.
same type of
Tamara,
funneling.
I agree with you
if I may
whole.
add something very quickly to that. People
There,
and Vita, hello, can you hear me?
go ahead, real quickly.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Now, yes, it's gonna be quick. Now the interesting thing about that is that the Republicans and the Dem I agree about the part about the Democrats, right? They don't truly actually believe these things. And that's why you can have Donald Trump as a president and you can have Christians supporting him, that brand of Christianity. I'm going to be very specific, that evangelical branch of Christianity. You can have them support him, although they don't actually believe that. And honestly, they are using Christians because the fear of hell is so ingrained. It is that they will do whatever it takes to not. The mind is so colonized, right? That they will do whatever it takes to not go to hell. And just like abortion used to be legal in the U.S., and when they wanted to criminalize abortion when because abortions used to be performed by women and men were not happy about that because they didn't have control of that branch of medicine. They went to the Christians because they knew that they were going to be militant and use them, and this is exactly what is happening again. They are Republicans are using Christians who are not thinking beyond the identity of Christian first, and I need to follow everything that the Bible says. And then Democrats are doing the same thing with identity politics. Yeah, that's
Agree.
all.
I agree totally. I want to let Candice go. She's got a little 4-year-old that I'm sure is like needing her attention. So let's make these the last two questions. Wanda and Ann. Go ahead, Wanda.
Well, good afternoon, or I guess good evening there. And unfortunately, I missed most of the presentation. I kind of came in at a point where you guys were talking about something that kind of caused me to raise my hand. But then when you start talking about the really gearing back to the real topic of the politics and why Black people being Republican and so on and so forth. And there was something that was said about the way that the religion and how and the beliefs are turning people that really are going against what makes sense for their congregations or their probably personal situation because of certain things like whether it be abortion or LGBT or what have you. And I just thought about a time here, because I'm in Los Angeles, and I actually was a member of a mega church for over probably 20 years or so. And I remember that there was a time when there was money that was being given out, and I think this was even before Trump or whatever. But anyhow, there was a lot of money that was being given to churches or whatever that followed, for whatever programs. But they were basically, I don't remember the full story, but basically there was maybe about 6 churches here that ended up, when they were exposed that they received these monies, they had to give the money back because the money that they went along with whatever was going on of the politics for that particular president at the time. And that was not being openly discussed, but they were receiving the money. And so when that came out, that whole story came out about which one of these pastors were receiving it. And I forgot, what caused the story to come out. It exposed several pastors that people were really disappointed that they would take the money from the Republican Party because of what was going on and a lot of the things that were being done against the community. And there's one person right now, Paula White. She was actually a member of the church, or at least if she wasn't a member, she was very involved in the church that I attended. It is crazy to watch how now she is sitting there in Trump's administration and the things that she's doing and where she came from and what she was doing within our church. I mean, it's just like, how did we have this woman in our midst, when she's there now looking like, as far as I'm concerned, the devil, So anyhow, I to make it a short, and you might have already had talked about it. I just, it was just an experience that I, recall of watching how all these churches had to, basically acknowledge that, they were going against what many of their members really wanted, when and receiving, monies, and when it came into to light that they had taken the money, but they were not making it aware to their congregation that this is how this money was coming into, to be. So, anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think. The political literacy and the religious literacy and how these organizations are set up, we don't have a lot of information about it, right? About funding and things like that. So it's exactly like you said, is like, we're not even looking and seeing. First of all, I was so interested in even in the Black church at large, right? Not even Republicans, but with everything that's happening, first you have what's happening in Sudan and the Congo, you have what's happening in Palestine, and how few Black pastors were willing to speak about this to their congregations at large. And we're talking about pastors who are in Black communities, who are not Republicans, right? But the difference that capitalism makes in regards to how people will shepherd a church. And the moment, and people don't realize that there are organizations that are literally paying the churches. They are paying them.
What's the money that they've given the churches? I call it hush money. Oh my God, what is it called? Somebody, they've taken this money.
Well, part of it's grants, I think. Well, I mean, some of it comes in forms of grants, but
there was some money that came out under the Bush administration, and if you took it,
this was that money. This was that money.
Can't even, oh my God! But there's a name for it. It's escaping me right now. But yeah, but essentially it was hush money. Take this money, stop educating your people, because there was a time, particularly in the 60s and 70s, if you wanted to know what was happening politically in the community, faith-based initiative. Thank you, Tamara. That's exactly what it was called. Yeah. So because prior to that, you got your education, what was happening politically in church. And I think, Candice, you were saying how, I expect if there's something that's big happening, whether it's the Congo or Carmelo Anthony or whatever, I expect when I go to church on Sunday that I'm going to hear about current events. And I don't go to church much at all anymore, but I don't think that that's happening. So thank you, Miss Wanda. Anne, your hand is up. We gotta let Candice go because I don't want her to never come back again. Like this
Okay,
lady's a
hi.
nuts.
Can you hear
Hi,
me?
Anne. Yes, we
Hi.
hear
I
you.
just want to say that I felt like listening to her because I am a Republican. I've been a Republican since I was age 18. And listening to her story, my story was different. I wasn't like grew up in a household that was Christian. It was my grandparents on my father's side that was the Christian, the church going Baptist and all this other stuff. But then on my mom's side, they were the more liberal, doing our babies up the babies' welfare. And I had a chance to be like exposed to all of that. And so I really feel like some people may be motivated because of their Christian belief, but then I think some of us it's just a combination of our life experiences. But when I think on the Christian part of it, that was sort of a part of my indoctrination. But when I decided to vote to join the Republican Party, honestly, back then at 18, I felt like I was just rebellious in a sense because everybody seemed to be Democrat. And I was like, if you all going to put your eggs in one basket, how do you expect the other party to address your needs? And so that's the position that I've sort of like taken. But I think over the years, I've evolved into some of their beliefs, not all of them. But then I also have to say that what really disturbed me in the Black community is you say we're not monolithic, but you want us to be monolithic. And when you come across someone that believes different, vote different, then you, some of you, I'm not thinking everybody's saying, but then you get this backlash about it. And so I feel like my life as a Black American, both parents are from America, that all of us don't live, have not experienced this so-called hard life. Some of us have lived very good in America and have achieved this so-called American dream. So there are certain things that we don't relate to, not because we're thinking we're trying to be white or this or that. We just don't relate to it because maybe that's not our experience. Now, with racism, I will say real quick, my mother raised us to not be offended by the N word because she told us if someone call you the N word, that's not you. That could be anybody. So I learned from her how to like work hard, make good grades. And then I found out when being an honor student, how some of the Black students would make fun of me saying, oh, you're trying to be white because you speak a certain way or you're making good grades. So there was just so many mixed messages that I think growing up that made me do what I did at the age of 18 and why I'm still there, to be totally honest, is because when it comes time to election, if you are an independent, you can only vote in the general election. The primary is where it's really important to determine who's going to lead this country. If you are independent, you only get to vote in your local elections. And so to still have a voice and to determine who's going to be a representation, I sometimes, honestly, I would vote for the worst Republican so they won't show up. And then if there's Democrats that I feel, I haven't voted honestly a full Republican ticket since Bush, to be honest. That was the last time I voted Republican. After that, and when Donald Trump came into office, I have really struggled being a Republican because he's not the Republican that I saw growing up and the views that I have adopted over time. But I still don't want to be an independent because I still want to be in that political process. But I do agree with Candice about the indoctrination, the money flowing, how they are manipulating the Christian faith because I grew up with Jerry Falwell and all of those big and I'm like, what if my mother was still here to know that these are people that she would send money to get a prayer cloth and all of this stuff. And the other day, lastly, I heard a pastor said that he prayed and the Holy Spirit told him that Donald Trump was the one and they're going to they named a bridge in Tennessee after him. And I'm thinking to myself, this man wouldn't even put his hand on the Bible. He openly said he's probably going to go to hell. And yet you guys are following him all the way to the end. And so I just think that what she said is so true. There's something more deep rooted that people are compromising their faith to follow this man. People are voting single issues, and that it's just making the politics is all not the same anymore. It is capitalism. Capitalism is the true religion. And I know that because I started a small business, and it is all about the money. It is not about the people, it's about the money. So I just want to thank my friend Max for inviting me. It was very enlightening. I kind of wondered, did she invite me because she know I'm a Republican? But I truly appreciate
I'm
your
glad you spoke up as a
presentation.
Republican.
Huh?
I said, I'm glad that you spoke up as a Republican, and we assume in these circles that you may not be the only one here. So I'm glad that you
Yeah.
spoke up. I must say though that I was more happy to hear that you are not a Trump Republican.
Oh no, no, he goes totally against my values and stuff. But the only thing about it that makes me wonder, my son, and I really hate saying this, but I have a 40+ year son. My son has never voted. And I never grew up in a house where we talk politics. And honestly, I never talk politics. But the way my son expressed himself, if he were to register, I think he's gonna lean Republican. And I don't, he's just very conservative and all that kind of stuff. But I just think, Candice, your presentation was awesome. You made me really think deeply about some issues and stuff like that. But I do feel when you were talking about the religion part, that's the part I resonated when I went to visit my father's side of family. They were all educated, they were deep in the church, but they never talk politics. But I think you cannot talk politics but still kind of make a person feel a certain way with how they see things. And the Republicans seem to align more with those views than the Democrats. And the Democrats just seem to be a little bit too liberal for me. And why are they liberal? Because I'm still thinking how my grandmother took me to church at a very young age about certain things.
Yeah, I wanna respond and maybe offer this as like my closing thoughts is you said values. I want to really push on that because we say a lot about values, but we won't carry it to where it's more than just us, right? And if I'm able to survive, and I know that the policies that make me able to survive necessitate that there are others who look like me, who are born in different places, that they have to be put on the bottom in order for me to survive. Do I feel good about that? And if I do, why? Right? Why do I need the exceptionalism that necessitates my sense of exceptionalism has to come at somebody else being on the bottom? There's a lot of things I think we really need to think about. Whose lives are we willing to trade for what, right? You mentioned in the contrast between your family, something that's very classist and inherently anti-Black, which is, oh, they're on welfare, the children, right? But welfare started as a policy for white folks, right? The New Deal. This is all policies for white folks because this is what a government is expected to do. And when Black people use it, we often have a feeling that they are somehow less than for doing the things that were literally made and Black people were kept out of. What I want to say at large, though, is the reason that we can even what we are talking about is a lack of information about what these policies do at large. We don't have enough political literacy for us to really talk about what is Republican, what is Democrat, and what they are doing. Because if we did, you would know unilaterally there is no way you can be a Republican and have any value that supports human life anywhere on the planet. And there's no way to be a Democrat where you don't have to reckon with the fact that this party is an enabler to another party who does egregious acts all over the planet. And for Christians at large, if the value that you have is more than just for those who are Christian, you're going to have to reckon with supporting inadvertently policies that have destroyed the largest cause of death for children is the war in Gaza, which both parties co-signed. And there is no way at large for us to have any conversation that pretends to care about human life, where we don't have to reckon with the ways in which we give power to those who enact egregious policies that will kill children at large, for the UN to say that the biggest cause of death of children is not hunger, it's literally a war in Gaza that we will fund. And to say that, and Democrats, Republicans, I say at large, devotion to a political party over devotion to each other is going to be the thing that's going to keep us from gathering. And I do not want to succeed in a world that makes my life have to come at somebody in Gaza. And if somebody's on welfare, that doesn't take anything away from me, right? And the ability that they've made this a zero-sum game and we don't know it, and that we blame each other in these ways, is because we don't know the policies. I would definitely recommend you read Mercer Barra-Duran about the racial wealth gap and how all of this is intentional. The thing is, all of this is documented. The thing is, we're not curious enough to go read it, because the reading of these things is really hard. The literacy part of this is really hard when the majority of the American population doesn't have but an eighth grade education, hasn't read a full book since eighth grade. So we don't really know what we're talking about when we're talking. What we're talking about is a lot of feelings and anecdotes, as you named. My family this, my family that, and which is great. But beyond your family and your experience, and this is for everyone, I'm just using what you said, Anne, as approach. What I call myself in a question on is, regardless of what God or whoever with spirituality, whatever, I believe my core value is that there is enough resources on this planet for all of us to have, that doesn't have to come at the expense of each other. And I will not give away my power to anybody or anything, any party that believes otherwise. That's my hard line. And I don't care who says what. I will not support it. I will not support it. I will not vote for any party, Democrat or Republican, who believes that giving money to kill children in Gaza while Black children are being gunned down in the street, Democrats will go along with killing children in Gaza, and Republicans will kill my children in the street right here. I am not for any of these. And any party who doesn't prioritize the safety of children doesn't have my vote. I'm not voting for you. I don't care who says what. That's me. And I want us to really get down to some real values. And what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to give up in terms of what comfort, how you've identified your family and belonging for the values you speak? And if we actually talk about Jesus, then that's the example that we should be willing to do. But many of us don't have conviction for real. What we have are talking points. We don't have conviction for real. And we're not willing to give up anything in the service of each other. And until we're willing to reckon with why we won't, we keep having talks as if we're in good faith, and they're not in good faith. I don't believe they're in good faith to us, but it's not noble to say that we are aligned in these ways. We've made allegiances with people who will kill people unabashedly, and we use our ignorance as a rubber stamp to continue doing it. Whether you know it or not, these parties do kill people at large massively, both of them, massively, massively. It's documented. Congressional records, it's documented. The money trail is documented. This is not a surprise, but I wonder how many generations is it going to take for us to wake up to be like, the survival that we need means we have to wake up into what we're living in, and what we're living in has never been good for us because it necessitated your grandparents and mine being killed for it. So at some point, we're gonna have to come together to figure out, beyond a political party, what's our values, yes, and who gets included and who's not.
Amen. I love the passion. I love the message. And it's those are the hard. I love when you said we don't have conviction, we have talking points. And anytime we see the two parties agree on nothing. Israel, we're on the same page.
We're on the same page.
Even had Hillary Clinton said she didn't agree with anything Trump did, but he's got it right for Gaza. I'm like, what? Like, they're so out of touch, it's ridiculous. So yeah, thank you for that.
See too many children's bludgeoned bodies on my screen to ever have a hard line that does not involve anything that doesn't do that in the world. And I cannot imagine anybody in this point in time who can look at a dead body of a child blown to bits with its intestines hanging out and say, well, it's the lesser of two evils. I think we are delusional. And I really want us, for the sake of our children, because I know that if they'll do it in Gaza, guess what? The Israeli defense that's training them is training the cops in our neighborhoods who will kill our children.
Right.
They are the same parties. And if it's only because we don't know that. And the places where these conversations happen, we judge them. We don't want to be over there with them because we don't want to give up the comfort we have in a capitalist society. But to have the comfort means that my children have to keep getting gunned down, and children in Gaza have to keep getting gunned down, because that's how this empire was set up. So we've got to reckon with this for real. And when people talk abortion and I say, well, I'm a single mother, come and pick up my kids. Then don't tell me to abort. Don't tell me nothing, because I know for a fact y'all don't care about single mothers in this society. You don't care about children in this society. We have a hunger crisis in this country for children, and y'all are not out here in the streets giving a fuck about any of these things for real. You let these parties manipulate you against your best interest, and we are each other's best interest. So if it hurts you, we have got to figure out that what hurts you hurts me. And if I'm okay and someone's on welfare, instead of looking at them, I should say, what has made this a zero-sum game in the first place? There's too much abundance here for me to judge my brethren for how they're acting in a society where crime is literally manufactured. A rich white man with a company and a government can steal billions of dollars, but if a man steals 20, they can kill this man? Because it's crime? Yo, I want us collectively to have some real conversations without the thing. And the work that I do involves me having to check myself when I'm like, what's the real belief happening here? And regardless of whether I like it or not, you got to be honest, baby girl. When you really want what you want, and you don't care who it hurts, that's okay. They're honest about that. We are not. We are dishonest. They are honest that they don't care about us. They don't care about, and most of us who are comfortable will lose it in a generation. We'll have it to pass. We've got to be honest about the ways in which we distrust each other more than we distrust the people who have made our material lives come at each other's expense. I want us to investigate that together.
Well, maybe we'll have you back. Oh no, I'm loving it. I think the audience is loving it too, because that's what we need to hear. We need to hear real talk, and we do need to get away from the two-party system and start looking at, who we are as humans. And like this mess and I heard you use this term that I like to use a lot too, the strange bedfellows. We don't get out of this mess that we're in unless we're willing to make some strange bedfellows. And if it's just enough to get us out of the mess that we're in, and maybe we'll see some humanity along the way, it's a beautiful thing. But we cannot stay in our corners and think that somehow we're going to get through this. So I love your passion. I'm so glad that you came. I'll be stalking you. Somebody said, would you please leave your Instagram information in the chats, and make sure you leave the links for your for the academy and for the your website, so that people know how to get in touch with you and maybe do some work with you, because I think you got a few folks here that are interested. I just want to say thank you so much, Candice, for coming. I appreciate all your honesty and your forthrightness. And I just defy that there's anybody who sat through this today who hasn't walked away with another perspective of something to think about. And that's your work, right? So for that, I thank you. Let me take Candice, and if you all can unmute and give Candice some love before we let her go get to her baby girl. I'd appreciate that. You all can unmute.
Thank you, Candice.
Thank you. Great talk.
Thank you, Candice. Great talk. Loved your passion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Candice.
It's good to hear the young people. It's good to hear the young people. We feel good retiring and going to be someplace. I don't know where it is, but to hear you speak, Candice, I feel good about it.
Exactly.
I believe in the world. Yeah.
Exactly.
Ellen, please make this recording available.
I certainly will. And Dean King is still here. That's a good thing, Candice. That means you resonated with the elders in the house. That's a beautiful thing.
That's good. I'm grateful.
No, it was really good. And I don't
Thank
know.
You so much, Candice.
I think, Candice, if you're, I think that you should probably do more of these community talks. I see what your professor saw in you, the passion that you have, your ability to take in the information and to turn it around and really make people feel what you're saying. So you do have power. You are a natural leader, and your information and your delivery was just, on point. So I can't thank you enough. So on that note, if you can hang out with us, we always hang out here and talk a little bit more, or you can go play with your baby, which I understand. And Candice is in Houston.
And then we have to welcome her to our amazing.
Oh, this is true. So we do this every, so we'll close out this way. When Black women gather,
Amazing
things
happen.
this has been another amazing Sunday afternoon, and thank you so much, Candice, for hanging out with us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So on that note, I'm going to stop recording so that we can talk we can talk some politics about what's happening right now. And thank you all for coming too. And thank you for so graciously accepting Candice into this circle, because it's not easy to talk religion. It's not easy to talk politics. And you all hung in here, and and I think you all, right. I think everybody was candid and got something new out of what she had to say. So
We came because we came because we love you, Helen. We stayed because we love Candice.
I love you too, Miss Sheridan. So let me stop recording and we'll talk just for a few